Hello, cloud people. Hello, tech people. Thank you for joining me today. I am so excited to talk to you about one of my absolute favorite topics in tech, and that's security. It is the topic that does not get the love that it deserves. But that's okay because it's going to get some love from me today. So my session, let's get started with my session, Hybrid Infrastructure Security from the Ground. Okay, let's go. I am Becky Elliott. I am a consultant and writer. I work for myself. You can follow me on Twitter at Becky L. Elliott. You can check out my website at beckyelliott.com. I am a member of some really awesome tech groups with people far more awesome than me, and I also have my CISSP. Okay, so let's get to security challenges. We live in a world where pretty much everything is online, right? Refrigerators, microwaves, light bulbs. Applications are moving to the cloud, SaaS, hybrid cloud, multi-cloud. You name it, it's online, right? And at the same time, this idea of a clear and delineated perimeter is dissolving, right? It used to be that if you were internal, you were trusted. If you were external, you weren't, right? And now there really is no internal. It's all sort of meshed together. And then in addition, we're kind of getting to this point where who or what can you trust? You have light bulbs and other IoT devices participating in denial of service attacks, right? And then at the same time, you have a real threat of insider threats. You have the Bradley Mannings, the Edward Snowdens, and then you even have the unsuspecting users who click on email attachments that they shouldn't, right? It has never been easier to be compromised. We live in a world where a breach happens, right? So Equifax had their public-facing web server that was for complaints, right? It was a complaint database. Threat actors were able to use a vulnerability to ultimately gain access to their internal network, and they were able to uncover 141 records of sensitive data, right? And then you have Target, where you have the HVAC system, and a threat actor was able to basically use the access that they gain to that to reach the payment systems and install malware, right? And with that, 41 million records were compromised. And so we have major compromises from the exploit of unrelated workloads, right? So this really is a world where maybe too much trust was given. Could a concept like zero trust save the day? Let's find out. Zero trust is never trust, always verify, right? This is a lot different than the always trust but verify. No longer can you assume that because someone is on your, and again, not just someone, some device, some application, because it's located on premises, that it's trustworthy, right? This really is a world where everything has to be verified and authenticated. And zero trust, you've probably heard this word, and it's more than a buzzword. It is a decade old. It may not be Kubernetes hot, but you know what? Maybe it's the year of zero trust, especially when you have all of these remote workers getting online. Okay, and so let's talk about the principles of zero trust. It is secure and authenticated access, right? It is least privilege, and that is the minimum that any service, application, workload, device needs, right? Nothing else. And inspecting and logging traffic. And that is a real challenge unless you're using machine learning or anything like that, because inspecting and logging traffic can take up a lot of storage space. And unless you're able to really inspect it, it is just a lot of storage. So both Google and Gartner have their own flavors of zero trust, BeyondCorp and Lean Trust. And Google actually has been working on BeyondCorp for 7+ years. And so they've done a lot of work with bringing zero trust to GCP. Okay. So what does zero trust look like when you see it in action, right? It's least privilege. Again, that's pretty self-explanatory. And then it's also whitelist. And that is where you explicitly define the connections or the applications, or you explicitly define what is allowed access. Everything else it's denied. It's pretty much an implicit deny. And that's kind of the opposite of a blacklist where you define what isn't allowed. And it's also identity management, right? MFA for the win. It's security automation, right? The SIEM tools, it's microsegmentation, and that is really sort of getting like workloads and applications into little buckets. And so microsegmentation is actually really good at helping prevent those lateral movement attacks or helping contain the spread. So if someone compromises your HVAC system, they don't automatically get into your payment system. And then there's also user and entity behavior analytics. And that is where it has intelligence to know that, hey, if a user logs in San Francisco, 3 hours later, that same user cannot be in China, right? That login request has defied the laws of physics, right? That's just not possible. And it's just kind of getting some intelligence into really behavior analytics. And this is really important for preventing those insider threats. So let's talk about what Zero Trust is not. It is not a magical way to prevent breaches. Will it help prevent breaches? Yes, but it's not magic, right? And it's not a replacement for sloppy cyber hygiene. So Equifax, they were already having problems with patching and vulnerability management. Zero Trust would not have saved them, right? And it's not a single product or solution. It's also not easy, but it will actually support your compliance and help you minimize the scope of SWIFT and PCI. So an important change that Forrester has made recently is that they have updated this model to sort of put data at the center, right? It's really easy when you work in ops to kind of get caught up in this idea that it's the servers that you're protecting, right? It's like, oh no, the server was compromised. But really, those threat actors, they're not after your servers, they're after the data, right? They're after your data. Okay, and so as I mentioned, this is Forrester's new Zero Trust Extended Framework, and really you can see that this has been updated to have data at the center, and then it has the pillars of workloads, right? Networks, devices, people, and then visibility and analytics and automation and orchestration. And this is just really key for you being able to manage the explosion of data and the complexity in today's environment, right? You are not able to do these things without visibility and analytics or automation and orchestration. Okay, and as you can see, Zero Trust is on the rise. Okay, so let's talk about some of the implementation challenges. Zero Trust, like any kind of change that you're going to make, it requires organizational buy-in. Like it's hard work, like it's a significant amount of effort, and you're not going to do it unless there is buy-in, right? The other thing is that there are people who say that Zero Trust is very challenging for organizations that have technical debt, and that is pretty much everyone. Most organizations are not like Zoom, where they take a 3-month pause on features so that they can pay down the privacy and security technical debt that they have. And honestly, the only reason that they're probably doing that is because it made the media, but that does not happen in the real world. Like technical debt is a fact of life in IT, right? Okay, and so this is Zero Trust is a journey. It's not a destination, right? It's kind of analogous to if you Marie Kondo your entire house. You are not decluttered for life. You need to continue to stay on top of it. Also, if you Marie Kondo your closet, you still are better off than if you haven't Marie Kondoed anything. Okay, so Zero Trust is part of your defense in depth strategy. And what that means is breach is inevitable, right? Compromises will happen, and so you don't rely on only one strategy for prevention, right? You build up a walled defense of multiple strategies. Okay, so what are some tips? Get clear with your why and your how Zero Trust will support the business goals. And that's like really important whenever you do anything hard, like why are you doing it? And so it's possible that the reason that you are embarking on Zero Trust is because it makes PCI compliance a lot easier, and it allows you to narrow the scope, right? And that ultimately saves the business money. Number 2, start small and make gradual changes. Zero Trust is not something that you can do all at once, but you can start with your greenfield applications, or you can start with your small minor applications and kind of work up to it and kind of see how things go. Also, and this kind of goes back to Forrester's updated model, it's really important that you know your environment and make sure it's documented. Automation helps. And fortunately, it's a lot easier to do this than it was 10 years ago. The tools are there. And last, SASE. And Secure Access Service Edge, I feel like I need to mention this just for this being a zero trust themed session. And it is pretty much named the future of network security and cloud, right? And it basically is delivered as a service. It's real time. It is converged with CASB, zero trust, firewalls as a service. And it is something to watch. And so if you want to find out more about SASE, check out Tom's Hollingworth's presentation. And call to action. Let's continue this conversation. I would love to talk with you on Twitter, or you can connect with me on LinkedIn. And if you would like to see these slides or get additional resources like an open source tool that you could run a zero trust check on, scan the QR code below. Thank you.